A very good morning. Welcome back. In this session, I am going to discuss about the Internet Key Exchange. We have started our discussion on the IPsec, which is called as the IP security, and we know that it is going to provide us different security services such as the authentication, confidentiality. These are the two major things, these are the two major services, security services that are provided by the IPsec. But in addition to this, we have already seen that it is going to provide us a concept called as the key exchange, which we can also call it as the Internet Key Exchange, and the short form of this Internet Key Exchange is IKE. So, IKE is an acronym for the Internet Key Exchange. What is this key and what is this exchange and why we require this key exchanges? All these things we are going to discuss in today's session. We know very well about these keys. In cryptography, whenever you want to encrypt something or whenever you want to encrypt a plain text, then you require at least one key. That key can be either the public key or it can be a combination of, it can be a public key plus private key, or else it can be a single key which is called as the private key. So, the cryptography is, again we know that the cryptography is classified into two things, that is the asymmetric key cryptography and the symmetric key cryptography, where we will be using two different keys for the asymmetric key cryptography and only one key for the symmetric key cryptography. All these things we are very well aware of it, but in today's session we are going to see how we are going to exchange the keys that are required for the encryption or authentication, whatever it may be. So, the protocol that is supported by the IPsec, that is IP security, for the secure exchange of keys between the two parties is the Internet Key Exchange. As I told that, we can shortcut it as the IKE. So, the key management portion, we can call it as the key management. So, the key management involves two important things. One is determination of keys, that means generation of the keys that are required to transmit or that are required for providing the confidentiality service, and the second key role is the distribution part. Once you determine the keys or once you generate the keys, how you are going to distribute those secret keys is one of the important part of this key management. So, the key management involves two important things. One is the generation of keys and the second one is the distribution of secret keys. The key management portion of IPsec involves both the determination and the distribution of these secret keys. We know that for communication to happen, it requires two parties. Let us say these are the two parties, one is A and the other one is called as B. And you may have a doubt, how many keys are required for secure communication between these two parties? If you are making use of this combination of private and public keys, that is the asymmetric key crypto system, we require public and private key for A like this. Therefore, two keys are required for one party and the other party private of B, and you require another key that is public of B. So, in total we require two keys for A and two keys for B. So, totally we have 4 keys. In order to have a proper communication or a secure communication between the two parties or two applications, we require these 4 keys. And the main importance of these keys is, as we know that they are going to provide the services such as the confidentiality, and they also provide the integrity. Of course, integrity can be provided by making use of digital signatures and all these things. The main concern for making use of these 4 keys is to provide the confidentiality, thereby you can securely communicate between the 2 communicating parties. This is very much important. And the IPsec document, IPsec architecture document, it supports 2 types of key management. Let us forget about all these things, what confidentiality, integrity, everything we have seen, authentication, how we are going to provide the authentication by making use of AH, and how we are going to provide the confidentiality and the authentication by making use of encapsulating security payload. All these things we have seen. Our topic of interest for today's session is the internet key exchange only. So how we are going to determine the keys, how we are going to distribute the keys, this is what we are going to concentrate. The IPsec architecture document supports 2 types of key management. Key management happens in 2 types. One is the manual key management and the second one is the automated key management. By these terms, you can clearly understand that manual key management is nothing but one particular person, let us call him as the administrator, the system administrator. He is going to sit and he is going to manually generate the keys and he is going to manually exchange the keys between the 2 parties. So if it is done by a person manually, which we are calling it as the system administrator, that type of internet key management is called as the manual key management. And the second category is the automated key management, which says that there does not involve any personal intervention. No persons are involved in this key distribution or the key determination. Everything is automated. So an automated system will enable the on-demand creation of keys and secure secret associations, and how we are going to exchange these keys, all these things will be automatically done by the systems. That is the reason why we call it as the automated key management system. So the topic is very simple. We have key management categorized into 2 categories. The first one is the manual key management, and the second one is the automated key management. In the manual key management, a system administrator is going to sit and he is going to manually configure each system with its own keys, and he is going to exchange the keys between the 2 communicating parties secretly. Whereas in automated key management system, one system will be dedicated for the creation of the keys, for the on-demand creation of the keys and for the distribution of those secret keys. If you look at these 2 things, the manual key management is suitable for small organizations. For small environments, the manual is suitable, but if the size of the environment keeps on increasing, or if it is a large organization, or if it involves distributed systems, large distributed systems, manual configuration is not suitable. Therefore, for large organizations, it is better you go for the automated key management. So these are the 2 important points you should understand, and these are the 2 important categories of the key management. This is what the author is explaining. So the IPsec ARC document mandates support of 2 types of key management. As I told, it is manual and automated. Here the system administrator manually configures and then he communicates with the communicating systems, and this is practical for small relatively static environments. Whereas the automated system enables the on-demand creation of keys for SAs, security associations, and this is suitable for large distributed systems with an evolving configuration. Everything we have seen, and the next important topic we are going to discuss is the default, that is the automated key management involves two important elements, that is the ISAC MP and Oakley. So default automated key management protocol involves for the IPsec is referred to as the ISAC MP and Oakley. These are the two important elements of this automated key management. The first one is the Oakley key determination protocol. This is based on the key exchange protocol, which is called as the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. We have a key exchange algorithm which is called as the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, which securely distributes or which securely exchanges the keys between the two involving parties. And this Oakley key determination, listen here, this is a determination protocol. So you are going to generate the keys here. You are going to determine the keys that are required for secure communication. And Diffie-Hellman is already present here for determination of the keys. And Oakley is a key exchange protocol that is based on this Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm. And why we require this Oakley, though we are having this DH algorithm, means this Oakley provides more security, that is it adds more security to the already existing Diffie-Hellman algorithm. And one important point regarding this Oakley key generation algorithm is the key exchange algorithm is it is generic in nature. Generic in the sense it does not dictate the terms, it does not dictate any specific security associations, it does not dictate any attributes, it does not dictate any formats. So it is generic, anybody can use. So it is not going to dictate the specific formats or the security attributes, nothing will be dictated by this. It is a generic and everybody can make use of it. And the second element of this default automated key management protocol is ISAC MP. ISAC MP stands for Internet Security Association and Key Management Protocol. So Internet Security Association and Key Management Protocol. What is this ISAC MP? This ISAC MP is a framework. This is a framework for IKE. Important point regarding this ISAC MP is it is specific in nature. So it depends on the protocol, the underlying protocol. So it is going to specify some formats. One has to follow these formats. And it is going to provide the specific protocol support only. It does not indulge with in all the protocols, or it does not merge with all the protocols. So it is specific to some protocols and it includes its own formats. One has to follow these formats in order to make use of this ISAC MP. And negotiation of the security attributes should happen before making use of this ISAC MP. These are the two default automated key management protocols. One is the Oakley key exchange algorithm, the other one is the Internet Security Association and Key Management Protocol. As I told that the ISAC MP is specific in nature, but remember that the ISAC MP by default it does not dictate a specific key exchange algorithm. Rather than it consists of some set of message types that enable the use of a variety of key exchange algorithms. So it is not going to specify some formats, but it has some default formats and one has to follow. This is what we have discussed, right? And one more important note you should observe here is that we have IKE v2, which we are going to discuss in the next session, that is version 2. The terms Oakley and ISAC MP are no longer used in this IKE v2. This is the important note you should observe, that Oakley and ISAC MP are for version 1 only, IKE version 1. They does not apply to this IKE version 2. But remember that the basic functionality remains the same. There is no more change in the basic functionality. The functionality remains the same, but we are not going to be using this Oakley and Isaac MP. So once we are clear about this introduction part of the internet key exchange, what is a key, where we are going to use this key, and why we require the exchange of keys, what are the two types of key management that is supported by the IPsec architecture document, like the manual and automated. And again, in the automated key management protocol, we have Oakley key exchange protocol or key determination protocol, and similarly Isaac MP. These are the introductory portion that is related to this internet key exchange. Once we are done with this introduction part, let us move our discussion towards the determination of keys. So we are going to have a discussion on the key determination protocol. So this key determination protocol, we are calling it as the Oakley, which relies on the DH algorithm, which is Diffie-Hellman algorithm. So let us see what is this Diffie-Hellman. We are not going deep into the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, but let us have an idea of how the keys are determined by making use of Diffie-Hellman algorithm. As we have discussed that IKE key determination is a refinement of Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm. Let us see what this Diffie-Hellman is doing. So let us take two parties, two communicating parties like this, two systems. One is system A and second one is system B. Let us assume that these two systems are connected with a secured communication channel. So these A and B are going to interact with each other. Whenever you are involving this Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm, you have these two parties, U means these two parties, A and B has to come upon an agreement on two global parameters. They have to come to an agreement on two global parameters. This is what we are going to use for this one. This is what we are going to use for this one. So the two parameters that we are going to, that these two parties are coming upon agreement are Q and alpha, where Q is nothing but a large prime number and alpha is nothing but a primitive root of Q. You can see here. So Q is nothing but a large prime number and alpha is nothing but a primitive root of Q. Once the agreement has been made upon this Q and alpha, then what A will do is A will take a random integer x subscript A, and this is the private key of A. It is a random number. He can choose any random number. This is the first step. And once A is having his private key, he can generate the public key by making use, we will use a notation like YA. YA represents the public key of A. And how we are going to generate this public key by making use of the private key is alpha power XA mod Q. So you will be using the primitive root of Q, you will be using the large prime number which is made upon an agreement, and we are making use of the private key of A. We means the A, the sender A is going to make use of his private key to generate the public key, which is to be distributed or which is to be exchanged with the party B. In similar way, B is going to take a random number that is denoted as XB, and it is called as the private key, and then B is going to generate the public key which is denoted as YB. And how this YB is generated? By making use of this alpha Q and the private key of B. Very simple formula. YB is alpha power XB and mod Q. This is how B generates, takes his private key and generates his public key from the private key. Once A and B are having these public and private keys, A can exchange his public key to B. Similarly, B can exchange his public key to A. Once they have their own private keys and public keys, once the two parties A and B are having their own public and private keys, now it is time to generate the session key. Session key is a key that is involved or that is activated for that particular session only. Session in the sense a particular duration of time. So, session in the sense it is a period of time or duration of time. So, for creating these session keys, one has to have the private and public keys. Most probably you require the private keys. So, this session key generation involves this type of formulas, where K is the session key, this one, and how it is going to generate means it is making use of the public key YB. Let us take this as subscript. It is going to make use of the public key of B power the private key of A modulus operated with Q. And similarly, the A, this is at side B, and at side A it is going to generate its own session key by making use of the private key YA of A and the public key of B modulo operated with Q. And this is equal to alpha power private key of A multiplied with the private key of B modulo operated with Q. The Diffie-Hellman algorithm is going to generate the session keys by making use of the private keys and public keys in this manner. Very simple technique. Let us have a recap of this Diffie-Hellman algorithm, how it is going to exchange or how it is going to create the session key by making use of the public and private keys between the two parties, that is A and B. Before the communication happens, A and B has to come upon an agreement on two global parameters. One is the Q, which is a large prime number, and the second one is the alpha, which is a primitive root of Q. And then in second step, what this A has to do is he has to select a random number, that is XA, which is a private key, and transmits it to B, the public key YA, which is generated by alpha power X power XA mod Q. And in step 3, B has to generate his private and public keys, and by making use of these private and public keys, every party, that is A and B, are going to generate their own session keys by making use of this formula. K is equal to YB, private key of B, power public key of B power private key of A, and modulo operated with Q. This is at side A, and at side B it is going to be generated as public key of A power private key of B mod Q. This is the formula. A very simple protocol or a very simple algorithm that can generate the session keys, but we should know the advantages, the attractive features of this Diffie-Hellman, as well as we should understand what are all the weaknesses of this Diffie-Hellman. Once we know the weaknesses of the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, you can estimate or you can think of in a manner that how this IKE can overcome these disadvantages. As I told that the base for the IKE is nothing but the Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm. And I also told that the Diffie-Hellman, this Oakley or the IKE exchange algorithm is somewhat advanced in nature when compared to that of the DH algorithm. So you should know the weaknesses of the Diffie-Hellman, and thereby you can understand the strength of IKE, how this IKE is involved in overcoming the drawbacks that are involved in the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. Let us see the important features or the attractive features or the advantages of this Diffie-Hellman algorithm. So these are the important features of the strengths of Diffie-Hellman algorithm. The main strength of the Diffie-Hellman algorithm is the secret keys are created only when needed. There is no need to create the secret keys well in advance, and there is no need to store it in the databases for a long period of time. Whenever you require, you just create it by making use of a simple Diffie-Hellman algorithm. So when you create the keys on the fly or whenever you require, the vulnerability of exposing the secret keys which are stored inside which are stored at the parties is lessened or it is reduced. So in order to reduce the exposing of the keys, we need to stop storing it well in advance. So in order to stop storing it well in advance, the only option we have is you need to create it on the demand, only when it is needed. So the Diffie-Hellman algorithm supports this type of generating the security keys or the secret keys only when it is needed. And the second advantage or the strength of this Diffie-Hellman algorithm is the exchange requires no pre-existing infrastructure. Only thing the Diffie-Hellman algorithm requires is that the two parties, the communicating parties A and B, they should involve or they should come to an agreement on two important global parameters, that is the Q, which is nothing but a large prime number, and alpha, which is a primitive root of Q, as we have seen in the earlier slide. So there is no requirement for the pre-existing infrastructure, no hardware, no extra or large hardware is supported, nothing is required. All that they need is the agreement on the two global parameters. So these are the two advantages or the strengths we have with the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. Now let us move our discussion towards the weaknesses of Diffie-Hellman. There are a lot of weaknesses, around 3 to 5 weaknesses for this Diffie-Hellman algorithm. Let us discuss what are the weaknesses we have. Right. The primary weakness or the disadvantage of the Diffie-Hellman algorithm is it does not provide any information about the identities of the parties. So no identity of party A, no identity of party B is being exchanged. There is no information between these two parties. Let us say these two parties like this. This is A and this is B. And they are connected with a secret communication channel or a secure communication channel. But one important point you have to remember is, even though the exchange of messages or the exchange of keys happens between this A and B, they are not going to provide the information related to this A to B and the information related to B to A. This is one of the disadvantages we have with the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. And the second primary disadvantage we have is the Diffie-Hellman algorithm may be subjected to the man in the middle attack. Very, very important point. Man in the middle. Let us explain what is this man in the middle attack with a clear explanation. Let us take two parties, the authorized parties A and B. And let us take a man in the middle, that is nothing but the attacker who is present in between these two parties. Here you can see that A and B are the genuine parties and E is the attacker. let us say that A is communicating some information to B. Whenever the information is communicated to B, the E will intercept that message, and what E will do is, after taking the message, he will create his own message with his own identity, and it is transmitted to B. That means E is impersonating. This is a new term. E is impersonating A. That means E acts as if he is A, the genuine party A, and he creates a message and sends it to B. This all happens when A is going to exchange the public key. We know that the public key has to be exchanged between the genuine parties. So when A transmits the public key, E intercepts and he impersonates, and he tries to act as if he is the genuine user A, and this E sends the public key of E but not A to B. And similarly, B, whenever he transmits his public key to A, it will be intercepted. This is public key of B. It will be intercepted by E, and he creates a new message with the public key of E and transmits that message to A. That means the E is impersonating B. That means the E is trying to act himself as the genuine party B. In both the cases, B will be having the information that is related to E, but it appears as if it is to A. In the same way, A is having the information, that is the public key of E, but it appears as if it has come from B. This is what is called as the man in the middle attack. This has to be avoided. We will see how this is avoided by IKE. What technique they are using to avoid this man in the middle attack. All these things we will see. Once the E is having the public keys of both A and B, whatever information that is transmitted between these two parties can be known to E. This is what the man in the middle attack is. Without knowing private key, you may have a doubt how it is going to get the information with just the public key of A and public key of B, right? So there is something that is involved. So B computes a secret key K1 based on B's private key, and YE is nothing but the public key of E. Similarly, A computes the secret key K2 by making use of the public key of E and as well as the private key of A. Once K has been generated, this K1 and K2, the session keys has been generated at both the parties, and when it is exchanged, they can be easily intercepted by E. So the key K, the session key K is with E, and it is prepared by making use of the public key of E but not with the public key of B. Similarly, the K1 is prepared by making use of the public key of E but not the public key of A. This is very important. So whenever the attacker is having this key K, he can make use of his public keys and he can decrypt it, so that he can get lot of information related to this communication of these two parties. This is what the man in the middle attack is. This is one of the disadvantages we have with this Diffie-Hellman algorithm, and that is overcome in the IKE. And the third disadvantage is it is computationally intensive. Though the Diffie-Hellman algorithm is very simple, it is very simple to calculate, right? you can have this q and alpha, and then you can take a random number as private number, and you can create the public key by making use of the modulus operations, and then you can generate the session keys based upon the public key and private keys. Very simple algorithm. But why we are saying it as computationally intensive means it is vulnerable to the clogging attack. Another new attack we are discussing here. Clogging. Clog means to block a particular system. This is something similar to that of DOS, denial of service attack. So let us see how it happens. Let us take the two parties again, A and B, like this, and it is connected, and we have another party E. He is the opponent, or he is the attacker. As we know that in the man in the middle attack, the E is capable of taking the requests, and he is able to generate the messages of his own and send it to the parties, right? So here what the attacker will do is he will request a large number of keys to this party or B. So what this, now the B becomes the victim, right? Let us say B, the opponent has attacked B, therefore we can say that B is a victim. In this case, the opponent, what he will do is he will simply make lot number of requests to B to generate the session keys. So the victim B is spending his computational resources such as the processors, all the inputs output device, everything, every computing resources is being spent on creating the session keys. Actually these many session keys are not required, but they appear as if they are the genuine requests from the genuine users. The attacker will make an illusion that the B is indulged in creating lot of session keys. So lot of computing resources are wasted in creating the session keys. Lot of computational resources are wasted in making use of the modular exponentiation. Session keys are generated using the modular exponentiation. We have seen it in the earlier slides. Because of wastage of lot of computational resources in generating or in making these modular exponentiation calculations, the real work will be pending. That means the victim, that means the genuine user B is made to spend his valuable time in generating the session keys which are not actually required. So they are blocking the real work of the B, that is called as a clogging attack. Blocking is nothing but clogging. So they are making this B wasting its lot of services or lot of resources in generating this thing. They are blocking it. Therefore I say that it is something similar to that of a denial of service attack. These are the three weaknesses we have in the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. The first one is it is unable to provide the required information of the two parties, and it may be vulnerable to man in the middle attack, and it is vulnerable to the clogging attack. And the most important note is the IKE key determination is designed to retain the advantages of Diffie-Hellman. What are the advantages we have? The first one is on-demand generation of keys. And the second advantage we have with this Diffie-Hellman is we know that no pre-existing infrastructure. So the IKE is making use of this too. That means it is going to generate the on-demand keys and no pre-existing except that the agreement on Q and alpha, while it is countering its weaknesses. So we are going to avoid this man in the middle attack. We are going to avoid this clogging attack by making use of different techniques. That techniques we will discuss in the coming sessions in the IKE. Once we are clear about the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, how we are going to generate the session keys and what are the advantages of these Diffie-Hellman algorithm and what are the weaknesses we have with the Diffie-Hellman, let us move our discussion to the IKE. These are the features of IKE key determination, Internet Key Exchange key determination. So the IKE key determination algorithm is designed to, as I told that it is designed to retain the advantages of Diffie-Hellman while countering its weaknesses. These are the 4 characteristics or the important features on which the IKE has been built or designed. The first characteristic is we make use of the cookies. Cookies concept is used to thwart the clogging attacks. So in the previous slide we have seen what a clogging attack is. The attacker will send a lot of requests to generate the session keys where the victim will be generating those session keys without doing the real work. So to thwart or to counter that clogging attacks, the IKE is making use of the cookies concept. We will see how to generate the cookies, we will see how the cookies will thwart these clogging attacks in the coming slides. And similarly, the second characteristic is it enables the 2 parties to negotiate a group. A group is nothing but a particular secure community where the communication happens in a secure fashion. That is a group. We will see with some examples also. Right. So it enables the 2 parties that are involved in the communication to negotiate on a group. It is in sense specifies the global parameters of the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. We know how this Diffie-Hellman key exchange is used. They are going to come upon agreement on Q and alpha, and these 2 things are almost similar to that of negotiating on a group. We will see it. And the third one is it uses nonsense. Nonsense, it's not nonsense, it is nonce. Let us remove this S. Nonce concept to ensure against replay attacks. Replay attacks means we have seen it, right? The third party attacker will receive the genuine message and he will replay it after some time, so that the receiver will get confused whether this is the genuine message from the genuine user or not. So he will stop his services. So in order to thwart the replay attacks, the IKE is going to use the nonce. We know what this nonce is, right? It is nothing but number that is used only once. So it is a pseudo random number. You take a pseudo random number and you will make use of that number for that particular instance only. I also told that this is something similar to that of OTPs that we receive while doing the banking transactions, one time password. So for that particular transaction only that password will be useful and it will be live up to some period of time. In the similar manner, we are going to use the nonce concept, which is nothing but a pseudo random number, for some particular time to thwart these replay attacks. And the fourth characteristic, important feature, is it enables the exchange of Diffie-Hellman public key values. We have public keys that are generated with the private keys of the parties, sending and receiving parties, and this IKE allows the exchange of these public. This is almost done in the Diffie-Hellman also, nothing great in it. And the important feature of this, another important feature and the last important feature of this IKE is it authenticates the Diffie-Hellman exchange to thwart the man in the middle attacks. Authentication is a very important service that needs to be provided so that the man in the middle attack can be countered, or the receiving party will come to know that the message has been sent by the genuine user only. That is called as authentication, data origin authentication. So this is done by making use of some digital signatures or the public key encryption. All these things we will see. The important features of this IKE is it uses cookies to thwart the clogging attacks. It uses authentication concept to thwart the man in the middle attacks. It uses nonce concept to counter this replay attack. So all these three attacks are addressed in this IKE. So this is the power of IKE. This is the advantage we have with the IKE. Clogging attacks countered by cookies, replay attacks countered by nonce, man in the middle attacks countered by authentication. These three things we will discuss now. Let us go with the first concept, clogging attack. What this clogging attack? I told you already, right? We have two parties A and B, and we have an opponent or the attacker E. These two are connected, and what this opponent do is it will forge the source address of a legitimate user and sends the public Diffie-Hellman key to the victim. So this A is sending his public key over this secure channel, but the opponent will attack it or intercept it, and he will do some forgery kind of thing, and he will send his own address. The E's address will be sent to B. This is victim now. What this victim will do is he will perform modular exponentiation to compute the secret key, but it is not required. Why? Because this message is not from the genuine user, it is forged message. But B will think that this message has been received from the genuine user only. Therefore, it spends most of his time in generating or computing the secret key, which is not required. And what this E will do is he will send the repeated message of this type and can clog the victim system with useless work. So he keeps on, he keeps on sending these types of requests to generate the secret keys, which is not suggestible, and he will just clog this victim system. This is what the clogging attack is. To thwart this clogging attack, we have seen that the IKE is making use of the cookies concept. Cookies in the sense a small piece of information that is generated by making use of one's own private information. So if somebody asks you to generate a cookie, it's not the cookie that is related to eating purpose, right? It is a cookie means a small piece of information which is created at the sender's party or the receiver's party, and for generation of these cookies it requires one's own private information, such as you can use your Aadhaar number to generate a cookie, you can use your date of birth to generate the cookie, you can use your user ID to generate the cookies. So these private information is used to generate these cookies, and these cookies are exchanged, and in the first exchange one has to acknowledge it. We will see all these things, but at this particular point you just remember that a cookie is nothing but a small piece of information that is created or generated by making use of one's own private information, such as the user IDs, date of birth, or the Aadhaar numbers, anything you can make use of. This is for just understanding purpose I am making use of, but system does not have this Aadhaar number, date of birth, but it will having this ID, right? It can make use of it. Let us see what this cookie is. Before going to create the cookies, how these cookies are generated, let us check how the cookies are used to thwart the clogging attack. As I told that initially when you have these two parties, let us draw the diagram again. These are the two genuine parties connected with each other. So as I told that a cookie is a small piece of information, or it can be a pseudo random number which is created by making use of its own information, its own private information. And once a cookie is ready at A, let us say this is the cookie which is generated, which is nothing but a pseudo random number, this one. This cookie is exchanged to B, that is to the other party, and this cookie should be exchanged in the initial message. So before transmitting the entire information, initially you will make a shake hand. For example, these two parties have they want to exchange the information. Before transmitting the actual information, they will first make a handshake. That means they will first transfer the important information, or they will just say hello, something like that. That is sent by making use of these cookies. So the cookie exchange requires that each side send a pseudo random. Similarly, B will prepare its own cookie and that will be exchanged initially before transmission of the actual message. This is very important. So this cookie exchange is done before the initial messages, before, or this is done as the initial message before transmitting the actual data or actual information. And once the cookie of A has been sent to B, it is the responsibility of the B to acknowledge it. Okay, I have received your cookie. Similarly, A, when it receives the cookie information of B, it has to acknowledge it to B. So acknowledgements are very important for these cookies. Once you initially transmit the cookie information, both the parties has to answer them, or they have to acknowledge it that they have received the cookies. And this acknowledgement must be repeated in the first message of Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So don't initially exchange your keys, or don't initially exchange your information directly. Before exchanging your keys or before exchanging the actual information, you try to exchange the cookies first and you try to get the acknowledgements. Until unless the acknowledgements are received, never transmit your messages. This is the important point about these cookies. For example, assume that the third party has involved, the attacker E is involved, and what he will do is he will take the message, the cookie, and if he wants to forge that message, the opponent will not get any answer. He will not get any answer from B. Why? Because the cookies are made with the private information of A. Right? So thus an opponent can only force a user to generate acknowledgements and not to perform Diffie-Hellman calculation. So even though he receives the things, the cookies from A, and he forgeries it, that means he has changed the address of, he has made use of his own information, but he has used the name of A, that is called as forgery. Even though he has forged it, the opponent, the victim, that means B, when he receives it, he is not wasting his time in creation of the session keys. That means he is not wasting his resources in creation of the Diffie-Hellman calculations. No wastage of resources is done. Right. This is how the cookies are used to thwart the clogging attack. So you create, both the parties create the cookies, they exchange it, and further exchange requires the acknowledgements to be received from the other parties. Once you receive the acknowledgements, then only you can transmit. But before that, let us assume that the attacker has received the cookie and he has forged it, but it is not, it is easily identified at party B, and it is not going to waste his resources in creating the Diffie-Hellman keys or the session keys. This is important thing you have to understand. and the three basic requirements of IKE cookie generation. We will see how to generate the cookies, but we need to know the basic requirements of the cookie generation. The first thing is the cookie must depend on specific parties only. So they know what parties are going to be involved. So for that particular purpose only we are going to generate, or for that particular parties only they are going to create the cookies. What is the advantage we have with the cookie dependence on the specific parties means it prevents an attacker from obtaining a cookie. As I told that the cookie generation requires some private information, like you can make use of the IP address of source and destination, or you can make use of the UDP port numbers of the source and destination. Right. So these two information can be used to generate the cookies, and you know very well that the IP address of source and destination are private. Similarly, the UDP port addresses of source and destination are private. They are not exposed. If you want to secure it, what you can do is you can encrypt these things also. So for creation of cookies, you make use of the IP address of source and destination as well as the UDP ports of source and destination. If you make use of this information to create the cookies, you can prevent an attacker from obtaining a cookie using a real IP address and UDP port, and this is and then using it to swamp the victim. Right. So these are the real addresses. Even though attacker attacks the cookies and he wants to change the addresses, he will make use of the IP address of his own. Therefore, the receiver will easily identify that this is not the original cookie from the original user. Therefore, he cannot spend his resources in creating the session keys. This is the importance of dependency, cookie dependency on specific parties. That means they are dependent on the IP addresses and UDP ports of the two parties only. And the second requirement of the cookie generation is it must not be possible for anyone other than the issuing entity to generate cookies. Very important. So you should make use of such an information from the issuing party, that is A, let us say, to generate the cookies. They should be very secret. They should be more confidential. Such type of information has to be used by this issuing party to generate the cookies, and those same type of cookies will not, it should not be generated, and it should not be possible for any other attacker to generate the same type of cookies. This is very important. So the issuing entity, this means that the issuing entity will use local secret information. This is what I told. Own private information or local secret information. So for generation of cookies, you require local secret information, and subsequent verification of the cookie should be done at the receiving end. And remember that it is very important that this information, this must not be possible to deduce or to get the local secret information for any particular cookie. So once you create the cookie, you should be so secured, and once that it should be so secured that the unauthorized third parties, though they get the cookies from the authorized parties, they should not get this local secret information. That is the secrecy you have to maintain for these cookies. Very important thing. So how he can make use of these, or how he can make use of this local secret information and how he cannot make the attackers to look at this information means you never save the copies of cookies. Don't save it. Right. So this is how we are going to make use of these cookies or to generate the cookies. And the third requirement is the cookie generation and verification methods must be fast. Don't take a lot of time to create or to generate the cookies. And similarly, don't take most of the system's time to verify the cookies. Your processor is very important. Your processor time is very important. Most valuable time or the most valuable resource is the processor. Don't waste your time in just generating and verification methods of the cookies. So the cookie generation, the simple point is the cookie generation and verification methods must be fast. So to generate a cookie, these three things are very important. The cookie must be dependent on specific parties, and the second one is the cookie must be created or generated by making use of the local secret information of the issuing entity, and it should be kept very secret that it cannot be attacked by the attackers. Though it is attacked, but the attacker should not be in a position to get the required or the local secret information. And the third important thing is the cookie generation and verification methods must be fast enough to save the processor time. Let us see how we are going to create the cookies. Very simple concept, very simple concept. So once we discuss about this cookie concept, let us go with the authentication and how these nonces are used, and then we will just put an end to our today's session. So let us look at how we are going to create a cookies. The best method for creation of cookies is to perform the fast hash method, or nothing but MD5 algorithm you can use. MD5 stands for message digest 5. It is one of the method to generate the hash. We will see it in the next coming topics, how we are going to use the hashing techniques. All these things we will discuss. So the best method for creation of cookies is to perform the fast hash, that is MD5, over the local secret information. As I told that the local secret information is something like source and destination IP addresses and source and destination UDP ports and some locally generated secret values. All these things, this source and destination IP addresses, UDP ports and local generated, we can call it as local secret information. Right. So fast MD5 is used along with these IP addresses, UDP ports and secret keys. And one of the second important characteristic we have seen, important feature, is the two parties has to negotiate on the group. So for generation of cookies, the IKE key determination is nothing but generation, key generation, supports the use of different groups for the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. We will see what these groups are in the next slide. So each group includes the definition of two global parameters, that is Q and alpha, we have seen it earlier, and the identity of the algorithm. Let us see what are the various groups that are supported for these cookies. So the current specification, that is IKEv1, supports the following groups. The first group is the modular exponentiation with a 768-bit modulus. There is no need to remember all these things, but you please remember that these are the various groups we have. So Q, you will be taking it as, listen carefully. So 768-bit modulus means you will be using the modular exponentiation, and the Q what you are taking is equal to, Q is equal to 2 power 768 minus 2 power 704 minus 1 plus 2 power 64 into 2 power 638 into pi plus 149686. And the second parameter is we are taking the primitive root of q as alpha is equal to 2. These are the two parameters we want to agree upon it. This is what the Diffie-Hellman algorithm says. And the second group which we can take is the modular exponentiation with 1024 bits modulus. And q is agreed as 2 power 1024 minus 2 power 960 minus 1 and so on like this, and alpha is again 2. And the third group what we are taking is modular exponentiation with 1536 bit modulus, and parameters that are to be determined, yet to be determined. And you can see here that this 3 represents the modular exponentiation. So Diffie-Hellman makes use of this modular exponentiation, these 3 groups that relate to the modular exponentiation, and the other 2 groups, this one, this 4th and 5th, they make use of the elliptic curve group over 2 power 155, and another one is elliptic curve group over 2 power 185. So we have different things, generators and elliptic curve parameters such as x is equal to 7b. This is a hexadecimal notation. Similarly, y is equal to 1c8 hexadecimal. Similarly, elliptic curve a is equal to 0, y is equal to something like that. So these elliptic curve groups they come in some other topic which is not our point of interest. The point what I want to make you understand is that creation of cookies make use of groups. They must negotiate on the group. So both the parties, for example, let us say A and B, these are the 2 parties, and they come to an agreement that okay, first we will make use of the modular exponentiation of 768. Then the q they has to take this value, and alpha they has to take this value. Otherwise, some other 2 parties, let us say C and D, they want to exchange the keys by making use of Diffie-Hellman. So let us take that they plan to make use of the modular exponentiation with 1024 bit modulus. So they have to take the q value as this one and alpha value is this one. Never try to remember this thing, but just remember what is the purpose of these groups. Right. So this is how the cookies are used to thwart the clogging attack. So here we have seen what the clogging attack is, and we seen how cookies thwart the clogging attack. First of all, before making any exchange, they have to make exchange of these cookies along with the acknowledgements, and the 3 basic requirements for IKE cookie exchange, and how this creation of cookies is done by making use of MD5. This we will discuss when we are discussing a concept on message digest. And what are the groups we have, what are the 5 groups that the cookies make use of it, and then we will move our discussion to another concept which is called as nonce. As I told that nonce is nothing but a one-time usage purpose. Nonce are for one-time usage. So IKE key determination employs nonce to ensure against the replay attacks. Each nonce is locally generated pseudo-random number, and nonce appear in responses and are encrypted during certain portions of the exchange to secure their usage. Very simple thing. Whenever 2 parties want to exchange the information, they will create a pseudo random number and they will exchange it first. So it is nothing but something like a counter. So whenever you have this one time number that is being used, you can simply identify that, oh, this particular message has already been received, why I have received this message again. So that is how the replay attacks can be stopped or countered by making use of this IKE. Right. Sometimes, as the other told, that they need to be encrypted to have the more security. So once we know about this nonce concept, how we are going to ensure the replay attacks, let us discuss how these authentication is being done in the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. And we have seen that in the features of IKE key determination, we have seen that the authentication will thwart the man in the middle attack. The main purpose of the man in the middle attack is that it is going to forgery the genuine user. It is going to send some messages to the victim as if, and those messages appear as if they come from the original user. To thwart such type of attacks, we told that authentication is required. So IKE makes use of different authentication methods. The three different authentication methods that can be used with IKE are digital signatures. This concept we know very well. So the digital signatures is nothing but the exchange is authenticated by signing a mutually obtainable hash. So whenever party A wants to send some information to party B, that information will be signed. He will put a signature like this, which is nothing but some hash value. So he will generate, the party A will generate a hash value and he will enclose it with the original message that acts as the sign of the data originator. And remember that each party encrypts the hash with its private key, very important. Encryption. So once you generate this hash value, that digital signature or the hash value has to be encrypted with its private key. Remember that a signature is nothing but a hash value, and once you have a hash value, you should encrypt it with the private key. That is very simple thing. And the hash is generated over important parameters such as user IDs and nonce. So how we are going to generate this hash value, or how we are going to create a signature means you are making use of some very important parameters such as the user IDs and nonce. And the second technique what we have for this authentication method that is used by the IKE is the public key encryption. The concept here is the exchange is authenticated by encrypting parameters such as IDs and nonces with the sender's private key. So public key encryption, we know this one, right? We are going to use the private key of the sender to exchange the information. And the last one is the symmetric key encryption. So both the parties are going to use the same key. So here what they are going to, how they are going to provide the authentication means the key derived from some mechanism can be used to authenticate the exchange by symmetric encryption. So here we are not making use of private key. Why? Because symmetric key encryption means both the user and sender they are going to use the same keys, not the same keys. Same keys they are going to use, and that key is derived from some important parameters of that belongs to both the parties. So you take these two parties important parameters and you agree, you generate a key and both the parties will agree upon it. And that is how the authentication is being performed in the case of symmetric key encryption. Similarly, in the public key encryption, you are going to make use of the private key. If it is private key, nothing to worry, everything is safe. Why? Because the private key is known to the sender only, it is not exposed. These are the three authentication methods that are used by the IKE, that is the digital signatures followed by the public key encryption, and then we have the symmetric key encryption. This is all about the Internet Key Exchange version 1. Let us have a quick recap of what we have discussed in today's session. So we have started our discussion with the introduction concept related to the Internet Key Exchange and how many keys are required for a confidential information to be transferred. We require 4 keys, that is the private public key of the sender and the private public key of the receiver. And according to IPsec architecture document, the key management can be done by making use of the manual method or the automated method. The manual method is the system administrator will take care of everything, which is suitable for small organizations, whereas the automated systems they make use of the systems to generate and distribute the keys, and they are suited for the large distributed systems. Right. These three things we have discussed. And the automated key exchange protocol requires two important elements, that is Oakley key determination protocol, which is dependent on Diffie-Hellman key algorithm, and the ISAC, the Internet Security Association and key management protocol, they are discussed. And how the key is generated by making use of Diffie-Hellman, that we have discussed. We take two parameters q and alpha, which is agreed upon parameters by the two parties. Some random number is taken as private key, and you generate the public key with some formula. And finally, when the two parties are having both the public and private keys, the two parties can generate their own session keys by making use of the formula k is equal to alpha power x a into x b mod q. After this, we have seen the strengths of Diffie-Hellman algorithm. Then we have seen the strengths of Diffie-Hellman algorithm are the secret keys can be generated on demand. Whenever you require, you generate it. Otherwise, there is no need to store the keys. That's the important thing. And the second strength is they require no pre-existing infrastructure. But the disadvantage with the Diffie-Hellman is it is subjected to man-in-the-middle attack, it is subjected to clogging attack, and they does not share any information related to the parties. So the IKE, what we have discussed above this Diffie-Hellman algorithm, makes use of all the advantages of this Diffie-Hellman, but it also thwarts the disadvantages or the weaknesses that exist in the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. These are the important features. We have seen all these things. So it makes use of the cookies to thwart the clogging attacks, and similarly it makes use of the groups concept, it makes use of nonce concept to ensure the replay attacks, and it authenticates the Diffie-Hellman exchange to thwart the man-in-the-middle attacks. Then we have gone through what clogging attack is again, and we seen how the cookies are used to thwart the clogging attack, and what are the three basic requirements of IKE cookie generation, and how the cookie is generated. In this part, we have not gone deep into the generation of cookies, but we have seen the basic idea behind generation of cookies, such as the fast hash technique MD5. And these are the various groups we have seen, 3 modular exponentiation groups and 2 elliptic curve groups, which are used for creation of cookies. And this is how the nonce is used. Nonce is nothing but a pseudo random number, and it is used to thwart the replay attacks. And finally, we have ended our discussion with a discussion on authentication method that is used by the IKE, such as the digital signatures, public key encryption and symmetric key encryption. That's all for today's session, and thank you one and all for joining the session.